Okay, folks, welcome to this morning's Saturday morning show. This is all about planting for summer, one of the most boring subjects. But it's not really.
Just
It's
going to say,
turning your garden or balcony into a magical and valuable haven. Valuable is the key word here.
yeah,
Because you could often, I mean, for most people, as soon as you say gardening, go switch off. Other people go, yes, best show ever. But it's true when it comes to selling your house, Richard. The most important thing is possible outside space. I was just
yeah.
round somebody's house in St Moniz the other day, and the first thing I said was, "Your house looks absolutely brilliant. What does your garden look like?" And she showed me the garden, and I thought, actually, it looks pretty good. She says
Mhm.
it was worse than that, and she actually thought it was appalling, her garden, and I thought, actually, it's pretty good in consideration. It was sitting in the sun, and it's all sheltered as well, and it's ideal. So, and that to me is with the lockdown thing
Yeah,
that most people have been taught at their outdoor space is another usable living space, so to speak.
yeah, more and more, and even more so since the pandemic and lockdown and things, we've started to outdoor living started to become such a more common thing and an expected part of a home to have that nice garden, to have an outside seating area, and especially where we live as well, to enjoy the outdoors, whether it's the countryside, whether it's the sea views,
Yeah,
they really do add that extra added value to your property. So really make the most of them. And gardening isn't everybody's thing. I mean, it can be a wee bit like tedious for some people, and it can be real enjoyment for others. But to spend that little bit of time, as we're going to talk about today, will add all that extra value and that little
listen,
bit of difference.
I'll give it its due. To be honest, I mean, when I had a wee bit more time on my hands, I actually found gardening pretty therapeutic. I actually quite liked it.
Mhm.
I looked forward to it every single day just to go out in the garden and pot in the garden, especially with weather like this,
Yeah.
where it's bright sunshine, because there's nothing better than just relaxing and just doing a bit of gardening. And God, I'm getting into it.
So no, it's
I
true.
was
Though,
there. I was there in my mind, honestly.
it's true, and we're going to talk about this being the right time of year to get your garden and gear for the summer and looking really good for that time of year for doing viewings and things as well. And I'm doing it myself at the moment. Don't have a lot of time to do it, but we're trying to turn the garden around. And evenings and weekends when we've got time, and definitely this weekend, we are going to be spending time in the garden because it's quite rewarding once it's finished and you get to sit in it and enjoy it. And if you're trying to sell your property, people will feel that as well when they're walking around.
That's a valid point because I often talk about that when I'm going around to see somebody. When I sit down and say everything, I usually typically say everything you saw in your property when you first bought it is everything I need to convey to the next person
Yeah.
because that's exactly why they're going to buy it and start their journey exactly like how you started yours.
Hmm.
So this is probably the brightest months and the longest days, the absolutely beautiful evenings outdoors
Yeah.
in your home, and May, June, July, August, you name it. This is the perfect moment to start planting for summer. And if the move is on the cards, a garden that's in bloom or a balcony with a wee bit of floral
Yeah.
in there, it can believe it or not can add thousands to your sale price and actually help you sell faster. I mean, we're only talking about some now for anybody. It's sitting in winter right now because we could watch this later on and think to ourselves, "I've
Yeah.
got to wait spring and summer." No, now's the time to go if you're in winter. Trust me.
Hmm.
Reasons for that. It's due to supply and demand, and nobody's listing their property, so you've got an exclusive audience all to yourself. Woohoo! Um, but but now is definitely the time. If you're looking to sell now, is definitely the time to take advantage of the floral bloom and the fact that your garden is now coming out into these beautiful colours, all the different things like the fuchsias and everything like that. So beyond the basics of the freshly mown lawn, which is a fantastic smell, to be honest. When I smell, you know what I remember when I smell a mown lawn, school sports day.
Yeah.
And you know why
Playing
that is?
fields. Yeah.
Because it's the first thing the council workers used to do was mow the whole place, to get it ready for
No,
school
they're doing
sports
that
day.
at the King George Park across from me.
That's right.
Been doing
That's
that
what I
for the
always
week. Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
I always remember walking down. It's no longer there. Well, it is. Aye, it's the extension of Victoria Road. It goes all the way down past what Brannigan's used to be, and
All
Home
right, yeah,
Bargains.
like the old
But
Hawkslow.
it used to be a wee lane. It ran down there, and it had a wee stream, and it had the Fib
Pond.
Fab. It had Fib Fab on the other side, the actual industrial bin maker, and you used to walk down there, and that's when you started to smell all the different smells of King George V Park and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or was it there? It was somewhere like that. And you used to smell all these emotive smells about where you were going. I'm maybe getting mistaken because that's nowhere near King George V Park when I think about it.
No, you're not thinking of the Swan Pond was down there at the Hawkslow.
Possibly, yeah, possibly something like that. There was something we used to walk up the steps towards King George V Park somewhere, and for the life of me, I don't know where it is now. It's probably been built on years and years ago. But my point is this. See how I talked about smells, how emotive they are,
how it takes you back and puts you into that place at the time, yeah.
And how shops and retailers use deliberate engineered smells in order to get you to buy more product.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, what's the first thing you smell when you go through duty free? Perfumes, aftershaves, colognes, everything like that. And it's the first thing that draws everybody to it. It's like, oh, I better get something. It's like you've probably never bought anything ever in your life, and you've always got it for Christmas. Then all of a sudden, when you walk through duty free and you smell it, you go, I've got to have
it. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I know, and we've spoke about in the past about scents inside the home, and we talk about it today as well about scents outside the home. And I know it's a real thing for you because that's a right trigger point for people and can make them feel a certain way and take them back to certain things and feelings. And it's a real selling point.
So my point is, if that does that to people to buy product, what do you think it's going to do that for your house? That's probably the most important thing. So this is the type of stuff we're going to talk about, and the plants can add a real pizzazz. So this is the main things. This is the main headers that we want to talk about. Preparing the ground, making sure it's all in order. Perfect pots and planters, beautiful beds and borders, designing for the senses, just like we've spoken about the now, and why that's so important to add that significant value to the end part of your home report. I mean, you think putting a couple of plants in the ground, but remember, even the surveyors walking through, and they're susceptible to these senses as well. So if you make because the first thing, what's the difference here? Here's a classic example about smells. You walk in a house and you smell damp, instantly devalued in your head, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And yet, if that smell wasn't there and it was still damp, but the smell wasn't there, you would never know, and you would probably still not devalue it in your head until you physically saw it. So see how smell and all the senses and sight makes a fundamental difference, as well as touch. And so these things and speech. So how you deliver all this can make an overall impression in someone else's mind in order to get your property significantly more value than what the home report's saying. And plus, it could actually influence the surveyor as well to get you a better start on a home report. I would rather get a higher home report and need to come down if possible, if that was to be, because than actually get a lower home report and try and push up. Because the higher home report is used by the banks to give funding.
Yeah.
So that's an easy access. Whereas if you've got a lower home report, then you've got a difficulty to get that up because that then has to come out of their pocket. And then the classic final is the keeping up appearances. Hyacinth bouquet.
I was like, not like hyacinth. Hyacinth bouquet or bucket.
Hyacinth bucket. So whether you're a seasoned plant whisperer with your trowel at ready, or a complete gardener novice wondering where to start, you'll find everything you need to know, and we'll seriously get down to earth. You like the pun there.
Yeah. Do you know, before we go through all those points, Jim, I think it's really interesting what you said about, do you know, whether it's just a small balcony or a little bit outside space, it could really add thousands to your end sale. And that's so true. And although maybe some people think, oh, it's just a wee balcony space or it's just a wee bit out the back, then they've just become a bit complacent to it, but you don't know where somebody's coming from. They might have no outside space, and that might be an absolute haven to them. And if you make that look really great,
valid point.
Yeah, then that's where you're going to add that value. And we're going to kick off talking about preparing the ground. And I feel like I'm a wee bit expert about this. I've been doing it for the last couple of weeks in my own garden.
Be my guest.
It's just no people. Oh God! Anyway, it's been a lot of work. But anyway, healthy soil is really the foundation of perfect planting, as well as providing obviously like the nourishment, and it holds water more effectively, and it helps everything in the garden really thrive, making your efforts all the more rewarding once you've got your flowers in and they actually start to really take off. And like I said, I said that thing when you could kind of sit back or step back, and it is quite a rewarding thing.
Have you been watching Clarkson's farm?
Yeah, I watched some of it. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I tell you what, that guy makes a fantastic point for the plight of farmers and how difficult it is for them, and the risks they take in their finances in order to come out with the food that we need. But then it talks about equally about the nutrition. And one of the things was recently I was watching last night about the nitrogen in the soil. So how important is it to actually have the right nitrogen content in the soil in order to help the plant actually grow, because it feeds on that. Never realised that before, how important that was.
And there's quite a big scientific side to farming that people just don't appreciate. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just digging up the ground and sticking a plant in. Do you know, there's a lot, and farming's quite an interesting subject.
I feel like becoming a farmer, but without the hard work.
There's a lot of early mornings and hard work and things.
I know.
Yeah.
That's just business as usual for me then.
but preparing your garden and getting the right ground and things set in. The damp soil is the easiest to weed, to take the trowel to, and lever each one out by the roots to really prepare and prevent regrowth, to get all those weeds out easily enough. So damp soil, and that's really been laid out properly.
With that in mind, you would probably recommend actually watering the soil before you actually start weeding. Yeah. If you've got rock hard soil, it's going to be lethal to try and get through. So
I remember weeding the garden when I was younger for my mum, and do you know, like, go and weed the garden, actually obviously doing chores, and you would try and weed when it was like dry soil, and it's really difficult.
It's brutal.
So yeah.
But who would have thought of that? I mean, it's something as simple as that. Just put some water on it and loosen it off, and then it'll be so easy to actually do.
Yeah, and really experienced gardeners and things, and that know what they're doing, they don't do what they call maybe double digging. And it's like, they do it properly the first time, and then when it comes back, you could easily weed as you go then as well.
Yeah, okay.
And also removing things like stones and twigs and leaves and things that gather in the soil, even if you need to get you get these blowers and things that get rid of things, and then bag it all up. You could either have a compost heap, or we obviously in Fife have the brown bin where it goes in as well. And if you've got extra soil and things as well, they actually go on Facebook. People actually buy soil. It's quite expensive to buy
soil.
Yeah.
It's actually quite interesting, because I remember with the grate, they used to shake it back and forward to get all the stones out. I must have spent weeks on end as a young lad, for my dad out the back garden, having to do all that. That all comes back to me now. I forgot all about that. My dad was quite fly. He used to put money in the garden. He used to throw 10 pences in the garden, so you'd find it and you go, and my dad would go, "Oh, there might be more." And then you'd dig the whole garden over by the end of the day, and you'd get about 50 pence. It's like, yay, I'm rich.
Yeah. You could really set a good basis with your soil, and if you've got it looking good, and then top it off with some compost, that gives it like that nutritional boost. And then obviously nature does the rest with like worms and things as well. And then you're ready to get all your plants in. And then although you might want to get right in there and start making it all nice and glamorous and things, it's like anything. Have a good ground, do the groundwork, have a good base before you start all that. And there's something to be said in finding the joy in preparing the ground for wonderful things that come after that, and that's having a really nice garden.
Now, quite interesting enough, we're going to go on to the next subject, and which is just so appropriate. Forest Street in St Andrews I was just round there the other day doing videos in Pre-Portal, and it's on now on the St Andrews page for a 3-bedroom linked semi-detached house. And what I noticed was everything was basically maintenance free. It was literally all stones and stuff like that. But the great thing is, I had perfect plots and planters all the way around, hanging, hanging baskets from the back fence. So it was all slabbed, but they had beautiful hanging baskets all the way along the back fence. At various stages, and then they had in the top corner, they had a whole lot of potted plants over there as well in full bloom, and then they just had some sort of creeping lavande or something like that just coming over the wall. So it gave it just gives it all different colour bursts all the way around. This, what if you took it all away, it would just be pretty clinical or industrialized, if that makes sense. So it actually made a fundamental difference. Now, when I went round to see them, first of all, I said to them, it's like, nah, I wouldn't really bother with that. And she says, well, I'll put some. I've said, okay, then put some out. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, that was the right thing to do. Yeah,
you did the right thing. You did the right thing, definitely. And definitely because what happens is when it comes to the surveyor, when they go around, they did value it up at the right price. They valued it up at where it should be. And where it might have been a bone of contention if they hadn't have done that, I would say. So, the pots, the hanging baskets, even window boxes I saw on somebody's house. Incident, I saw some window boxes in somebody's house, which was really good. It can fast track your outdoor space without actually having to do that into some oasis of colour, and textures and shapes, aromas as well. You get from some of these things, from enhancing a plain patio, as we talked about, to making a front door more welcoming when somebody comes to it. Curb appeals everything.
Front door's so important.
Yeah, curb appeals everything. If you've got a horrible, flaky front door, and I'm talking about your house when I'm saying that.
Yeah.
It's all right. We'll not go there.
No.
If you've got a horrible, flaky front door, and window panes, you need to brush them down, clean them up, and paint them. As well as the boxes, the window boxes on the front would be absolutely glorious. And then some potted plants round about maybe your the stoned garden, around about the stone chip garden, and then the driveway to the side and stuff like that, and just give a splash of colour of pot plants beside either side of the door before you actually walk in. I mean, that could make a fundamental difference overall. So that's what I would probably recommend. And for I would say for containers on patio doors, or decks or terraces, mixed glazed and terracotta finishes.
The different
a lot in
textures.
East Nuke. Yeah, you see that quite a lot in East Nuke, with a combination of trailing and succulent plants, which will help you create a flowing and natural look when you walk out there. Probably the other recommendation for me is fill pots and window boxes so the soil stops about 2 inches before the rim, to leave enough room for maybe a top dress in the bark, so it avoids you having to keep weeding it all the time, or maybe slate, or maybe pebbles, and it'll allow it as well for more effective watering.
Yeah, there's a lot of different pebbles and, like you said, slate and things, or you even get the wee chip barks and things, and they actually make pots and things look really nice. And it acts as like a drainage in that as well. You meant to have some stones in the bottom. My granny told me that, stones in the bottom of your pot. And then obviously, but it's multi-purpose because it's decorative, but it's also serves a purpose in terms of the watering and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think the use of bigger pots or for larger plants may be appropriate, but check the growing times. That's essential, as Caleb fell foul on the Clarkson's farm. planted the rapeseed far too late, and paid the price and the yield on the harvest.
That's a costly mistake to do that.
Yeah, big costly mistake. Thousands. We're talking about £20,000 or £30,000, and what he could have got. But check the growing times, and they're recommended on the containers to ensure the full and the full and luscious pots overall. Mostly the hint here is, if you want to do it yourself, you can DIY it. But the hint is when it comes into B&Q or your local garden centre. So your local garden centre or B&Q, get them in way before it's due to happen, and you're almost maybe about what, maybe 2 weeks or a month away from that actually being able to do. So they get them all early and line them all up, so they're ready to come into full bloom once you put them in your on your back patio, at your door, and your garden, and your terrace or your balcony later on. So that's probably the key here. And so if you're going to DIY it and try and do it yourself rather than actually going to any of these places to get pre-made stuff, then that's the clue about when to start and get it done.
Yeah.
I think my final thoughts on the pots and planters is to reduce the amount of replanting needed to update the look by filling some of your pots with annuals that die after flowering, and others with perennials that bloom year after year.
Yeah, you're right, because like you say, having that maybe a wee cluster of pots on your deck or on your patio or whatever, have a mixture of things that obviously they do flower and whatever in certain times of year, but they die off and cut back. But in the time after that, you've still got things that are there and, like you say, are all year round.
The easy gig stuff is things like daffodils and crocuses.
The bulbs,
And
that come up.
bluebells and stuff like that, and tulips. These are all easy, low-hanging fruit for anybody. You literally don't even need to be a gardener. Even my cat could probably make an attempt at that and it'd be successful. My cats are actually quite good at this.
Your cat no listening on Rightmove.
Aye, I'm sure my cat sold a house in lockdown as well, because it was that much of a boom market that even my cat could have sold a house.
Yeah.
Didn't buy a house though. I tried to coax it into it, but it didn't. So that then takes me to the next subject about what we talked about was the beautiful beds and borders. I mean, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, I think it's quite nice, but does it take a lot of work?
Well, it's something that, like I say, I've just done it myself, or in the middle of doing it, and creating garden beds it isn't as tricky as it might seem. Now, as long as your plants have enough space to grow, and you mix, just like kind of like the pots, you mix things that are evergreens with some like seasonal varieties for like a year-round interest and effect there. And really, if you get that right and do the right planting and pick the right plants, nature will do the rest, throughout the seasons. For like borders against a fence or a wall, put the tallest growing plants at the back and graduate the heights downwards towards the front. And what to do is also offset them in a triangle set up. So you've got two at the back and then one in the middle at the front and then two in it. And do it like that. So then you've got that natural looking style and they're not all one in front, so they're not sitting directly in front of each other. It's like a triangle. Yeah, definitely. And you can also use beds as like a transition between the different areas in your garden, like your lawn to your patio, with low-level planting, or to maybe even screen off private zones behind maybe tall stem pampas and bamboo as well, but be careful about bamboo because it could really take over. And just all these different things where you could create an actual natural wall between different sections of your garden and things as well. So that's really important. But as I say, the bamboo one, be careful.
I've seen that quite a lot. Where did I see that recently? Black Laws Cottage, 0.9 of an acre. It's away in 5 days. Offers over 650,000. It's gone. So it just shows you there's buyers out there at that sort of price point just now. Even though we talk about it all the time, saying it gets more and more difficult as you go up past 300,000.
Yeah.
But it just shows that actually happens. So I did see it up there because their front garden was all sectioned off, and then you came to the side, and the side was a huge garden area, and they had this beautiful centerpiece, which was a surrounding where you could sit. But they also had the bit over to the side, which you had the shed and everything like that if you needed it. And you could actually build more there and make it more, make it even more purposeful. And then as you come round towards the back garden, they've got a bit of forestry up there for things like, there's a person that lives close by, I think, has bees, and they have a hive over there on that bit of ground at the back in the forest bit to the rear of it. But it just shows you there's all different areas. Now, for me personally, I would never be out there as a young kid, in that forest bit climbing these trees all the time, because that would be in my element. and it's a nice. I'm going to say safe, secure environment. Obviously, it's trees, and you're taking a risk climbing trees, but it's still within your own garden, and it's still manageable, I would say, because the trees are not designed to grow that fast. Therefore, they can easily, and I think they get to a certain height, and that's them done. They don't really, they're no invasive. No, like, I think, is it the conifers? Jeez.
Oh, they could get some height. Yeah.
God, conifers just take over everything.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you think this is a great idea, and then the next minute, they're about blooming 20 feet tall, and you wonder how you're going to ever cut them down or cut them back. So you've got to. I think you've more got to be careful about what you're putting in between, like what you said about the bamboo. You know, bamboo is quite an invasive plant, and it grows pretty quick without you even knowing it.
I've got
so
one.
I definitely think that's. I definitely think you have to have a think about what you're going to put in there. Do you watch any garden shows or anything like that to pick this information up, or is it just reading up on it?
I used to watch quite a lot of gardening things as well. As I say, I've not got the most time in the world to be spending in the garden, but when I do, when it gets to this time of year, I like to try and spend some time in the garden, and it's quite a relaxing thing to do as well. It can be quite stressful if you start really excavating and things as well. And if you've got a really big garden, unfortunately, I don't have a big massive garden because it's a lot to look after. You really need to be quite keen or have a gardener helping you do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I've got 1,500 square meters.
Oh, I was going to say, Jim, you've got a fair size plot. Yeah,
I'm not even a gardener, and I'm not even keen on it because it's for me personally, it doesn't align with what I want to do. It's nice to sit in a garden. It's nice to sit in a wee sun trap area, but literally our side garden's like a football pitch.
Yeah. And then you back right onto the Glen as well.
Funny enough, Martin was actually talking to me the other day when I was up in Beach Park. He says, I used to come round there when the previous owners were in there. He says, we used to play football in that side garden all the time.
Do you know, when I was younger, and I'll not go into too much detail exactly where, but you used to come up the hill behind the wee hut at the bottom, and then and I used to look over the fence into the big fish pond, and I know the owners that were there before, but that was when I was a wee lad. But yeah, that was your house, obviously. That wasn't at the time.
Okay, so there's lots of different things you can do, but it can get overwhelming. Choose the right plants. What other things do you have to think about then?
Well, as you said there, Jim, about that one, the definitive different areas and things, you can really define different areas, whether it's the lawn or the patio or your edging or your borders, with nice edging, and you get really like high-end steel strips or ceramic blocks, or you get the hardwood sleepers. Do you know, like the old railway sleepers? That's a really on-trend thing just now.
Even as simple as the old style bricks.
Yeah. Yeah, the old.
If somebody's knocking down their brick shed or something like that, and they've got these old type of bricks that they have character to them, nothing like breeze blocks, to be honest.
No.
But then they would look really nice as edging as well.
So and it gives you that nice, that crisp line between whether it's lawn and the edge or lawn and your patio or something, and it does really just make it neat and tidy. But I think really, most of all, don't really be daunted by the garden, and a lot of people can be. Plants can come with labels and tell you whether they like the sun or whether they like the shade, and you could just obviously put them in the right place. How much water them. Watering things in pots is really important. I've lost a lot of plants doing that. But and while the nice people at the garden centre will always be there to help you as well. So I mean, like you said, if you go into B&Q, a lot of the guys that work in the actual plant bit, they've actually got quite a lot of knowledge about the plants and that as well. So I mean, that's what they're employed to do. So definitely
is it worth, if you've got a bigger garden, maybe just and you can afford it, actually having somebody come round and actually just do the garden 1 hour, maybe 2 hours a week on it?
There's a couple of local gardeners that I've heard really good reviews about, and they just come every 2, possibly 3 weeks, depending on what they need to do. And it's keeping on top of like the more mature shrubs and hedges and things, the garden, if you've got a lot of lawn space, and things as well. And then they just keep on top of the weeds in between your slabs and your beds and things. And if it's every 2 or 3 weeks and you're paying them, maybe, I don't know, 40 quid, something like that, if you're busy and working, it's definitely worth it.
If you can get them for 40 quid, I'll
Yeah,
tell you
I
that.
was just, I think they'll come and cut the grass and things, but then obviously there's add-ons. Obviously, if
It's a lot more now, eh? It's
Yeah.
it's changed days of the just like the 20 quid an hour. Most
Yeah.
gardeners are about 40 or 50 quid an hour. And
Right.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but they've got to pay for all the materials, they've got to then pay for their labour, they've got to then pay for their van, all their tools, all their equipment, and that just all costs money. So while you think you've got them for an hour, it's really the hour of the tools and the costs that I have to do is what you're paying for as well, because you need to do, unless you supply all these tools and just get somebody off the street to basically do it a cash in hand.
Yeah, the cost of
But then
people's time.
you run the risk. Here's the key here. You run the risk that they've no got insurance. So if anything goes wrong,
liability
and
insurance.
they suddenly go dig, 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 boom, or dig, 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 whoosh, and they go through a pipe or a sewer or something like that, then you're in trouble because you're liable for it because they've got no insurance at all.
Yeah. Yeah, any contractor you've got on site doing stuff, make sure they've got the proper liability insurance.
We had that in the early days, and when somebody was actually doing a garden, it was Mark, and literally they had to take a pickaxe because they were taking a pickaxe to the front wall, and they're going boom, 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 and the whole pickaxe flew out of their hand and away out the back, and it was apparently because they'd hit an interconnector for the electricity. Where
Right.
it all interconnected, it's like a big massive splicer where you put two massive cables together and wrap it up in this sort of core thing. They'd hit that, but these things are meant to be about 6 feet down. This was only about 2 feet. Yeah, this was only about 2 feet down. So that's how he basically argued that principle. It's like these are meant to be 6 feet down. They're not meant to be 2 feet down. So how on earth would I ever know that was there? So when I'm taking a pickaxe to try and dig this all up and dig this all out and get rid of the concrete, lo and behold, it's right in front of me. But then also, when you think about the logic of this as well, when you put for sale boards down, this is why we get a proper contractor, a sign company. That's all they ever do, because they've got the liability insurance. They know exactly where they should be putting boards. So when they're knocking them into the ground, they know where they should be putting them for that reason. They understand where everything comes in from the road, rather than actually trying to do it yourself. And then the next minute, it's like you've burst a pipe or you've damaged a gas pipe. You've split the broadband cable or something like that. And then you've got no liability insurance for it. Therefore, it's like, all right, okay, that's me finished then. And they walk away off the job and you're left high and dry to get it sorted.
Do you know, it's one of these things where people, a lot of people think, oh, that's simple, and they think they know better. And really, I mean, even if it comes into something as simple as putting a board up or putting something into the ground, it's knowing the right place to do that.
I've done that loads and loads of times. It's not with the garden, but I can talk about the amount of times I've had an attempt at plumbing. And I can do plumbing and understand it now, but I wouldn't dare, because it's just that point where you maybe just over tighten that nut on the on the radiator for the pipe with the water in it, and then all of a sudden the nut actually over tighten it and it splits. And it's like, shit. It's like, oh no, and then the water starts pouring out and you can't do anything about it.
Oh no, no pun intended.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about it. The only thing you would have to do is shut off the valve, pull the pipe out, and quickly turn pinch it over with a set of Stilsons, so it actually shuts it off, and then you call the plumber to get them out, and then it costs you an absolute arm and a leg even more than what it was before. So my advice is probably get an expert in if your garden is a bit more than what it should be, maybe just to help you out. Maybe just to keep it nice and fresh all the time, especially when you're selling.
Yeah.
Especially, and if you've got a holiday home that you're selling because you'll not be there anymore, if you've got a second home you're selling, service accommodation, if you've got a private rented property you're selling because you're no longer there either, make sure in the summer and the spring months, at the time when it's all going to be growing, that you at least get somebody around to maintain the garden now and again.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse, Richard, when we come round and I walk into a back garden and it's like the jungle.
Yeah.
And literally when we first took it on and the pictures looked absolutely lovely with this beautiful short grass, and then the next minute it's like the Amazon.
Yeah, and it only takes a couple of weeks, a wee bit of rain and this sun that we've had, and things shoot up.
At this time of year, definitely, I would say that. So this is where it takes me. Almost we're nearly there. We're second last from the end. So how important is it then for? Yeah, probably senses. You know, when you're sitting in the garden, the smells that you're going to get, the touch that you're going to get, and just the stimulation from seeing something in bloom. So we talk about designing for senses. So I think it's just like your rooms, the gardens and balconies are the best. At their best when they're designed for enjoyment, probably as well as style.
Yeah.
From relaxing in comfort to encouraging maybe biodiversity.
Bees
So,
as well, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a
Bees are
thing.
really important.
I was listening one in Perth the other night. By the way, I don't sell property in Perth, but
I
it was
know.
for a friend,
Yeah.
and they wanted me to do it. So I went up to Perth and I did my video walkthroughs. We've got a lot of activity on it, and it's going to probably sell easily.
Yeah.
Then I think, wait a minute, low hanging fruit. And I think, oh, sell property in Perth as well. No,
I know
don't,
you're
Jim.
going to get
Shut up.
hounded.
Shut up, Jim. You're not selling property in Perth. It's just Fife. So then I looked at that, and it was quite interesting because I went out the side garden, and they'd left this bit for rewilding.
Yeah.
And it attracts all the bees and the insects because of that. So that was their bit in their garden, where the rest of the garden was all manicured and landscaped. And there was a party area to the rear, but there was just a wee bit for all the insects and the bees, and I thought that was pretty good. And that's what it says. You're basically encouraging biodiversity. If it wasn't for the bees, if the bees weren't here anymore, this planet would probably be dead within weeks.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to pollinate plants.
Yeah, people don't appreciate the importance of the biodiversity and things as well. And a lot of people are there is a lot of people that are quite conscious of it as well. So if they feel like their garden, as well as being an enjoyable space, has that benefit, then that could be a good selling point as well.
I think there's nothing better. Interestingly enough, I actually visited somebody the other day, and they said, I can't stand lavender. And yeah, I think there's nothing better than lavender.
I've got a few people that don't like it, and I like it. I've got it in my garden.
I wonder why that is, but because I know cats love it. Because we used to have a lavender bush in my mum and dad's garden, and I tell you what, the cat that was her bed. She literally slept in there every single day. She loved sleeping in the lavender plant in the middle. So I think lavender is a really good plant to have, especially for biodiversity as well, and it actually grows quite well. And you don't really need to do much with it. It's pretty good that way. The roses are a dead cert, aren't they? You know, everybody likes roses. Everybody likes roses. Yeah, I mean, you get the yellow and red sort of patchy ones. You know, the sort of yellow and red roses you get, and yellow and browns.
Yeah,
you get the traditional red rose, but I think there's just something really nice about it, and it also attracts a lot of butterflies, a lot of bees, and birds. For birds as well, sunflowers has got to be the one, and teasels as well. So for an outdoor space that's truly alive, look for plants that actually welcome wildlife. I think that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Now remember, the bees aren't going to sting you, so leave them alone. They'll just keep it. They'll just fly away. Don't panic when they come near you. They'll not sting you or anything. You just brush them off. Or a classic one for wasps has got to be stick a jar with a bit sugary water in it. And I'm not really sure if wasps actually contribute anything towards society, but they must be here for a reason. There must be a reason.
Everything's got a reason, but obviously bees have got quite a prominent and important role in the ecosystem and things as well. But I don't know about wasps, and I know a lot of people don't like them, but they're a creature all the same. I think
they get a hard time, don't they?
They do.
They get a hard time, but they look really nice. It's just that, but it's the impression that when people immediately see a wasp, you think sting.
Yeah,
it's the first thing you think about, isn't it? Sting, and yet I could count on one hand the number of times a wasp stung me. maybe twice in my lifetime. And I'm
Exactly.
57, so it's not exactly, and it's not exactly life threatening. It's like, oh yeah, and that's about it really. And for a couple of days of suffering, that's the end of it after that.
Yeah,
What about
but
seating
yeah,
areas?
you're totally right about all the plants. But yeah, seating areas as well, and I say as well, like if you have somewhere nice and comfy for seating, and you could really sit and enjoy the garden and really savor your hard work, and look at the results, and really have that dressed properly as well. You get all these waterproof cushions and things now, and throws, and you
Yeah.
get all the different lighting, and you could create this really like snug coziness feeling through the day and at night. And if people come in and see that and think, oh, I could sit here, and you do it a lot when you do your videos and things, Jim. If there's a nice place to sit,
First thing I do.
you'll finish off, or you'll start or finish off, and really get people in, and that creates that feeling. And that's even through video. And then in person, people get that as well.
Yeah. It's the most important thing, I think, when you walk into the outdoor space,
Yeah.
is where's the sun going to come up and where's it going to go down?
Mhm.
And I don't think I've ever been at a house it's never had sunshine at some point in time in the garden.
Mhm.
And while some houses give you that impression just looking at photographs and descriptions and knowing the area, that's why I feel it's important to talk about it when you're in a video. This is why I feel when I when I when I when I'm doing video that talk up video is the most important thing ever. And
And
it
so why?
literally is. It literally is like television.
Mhm.
It is like you're watching Grand Designs. I'm not saying we're the same format as Grand Design, but it's like you're watching Grand Designs, or you're watching Live It or List It, or you're watching Phil and Kirsty
Yeah.
on something else. Location, and or Homes in the Sun.
Mhm.
I think it's probably the most important thing to a lot of people, and it's primarily driven by the fact that the health benefits from having vitamin D, for example, and you can only get
Yeah.
it from the sun apparently, and the way it absorbs naturally, and also the natural feel about the sun being on you.
Yeah.
Now, remember, don't overuse it. Everything at some point in time is
Everything in
bad for you
moderation. Yeah.
if you do too much of it. So moderation is the key here, or cover up, or put lotion on, or something like that. But the sun is really important, and that's why I think it's a big plus point to do a walkthrough video and talk about it as well when you're out the back. You just can't convey that in what we call a silent movie. You
And
know,
the thing about video,
the video would just basically music in the background.
yeah, and the thing about the video and the walkthrough and things is because it appeals to people's senses, like we're talking about.
Of
You know,
course it does.
it's the sound and the sight and the things, and people are receptive to that apart from just looking at a picture, which
It's
obviously.
the it's the impression I get when I sit down. I
Mhm.
actually feel that. So when
Yeah,
people see that in a video, that's not made up. That's how I feel at
and you
that point
feel,
in time. When I
yeah,
literally say here, talk amongst yourselves, and I'll just sit here for the rest of the day.
yeah,
I genuinely mean that at that point in time, because it's just glorious with the sun beating down on you, and thinking you could just, I could just sit here all day with a cup of tea,
mhm,
or a cup of coffee or something like that, a wee glass of wine or a glass of sherry, or a whiskey or something like that, and just sit out, or a can of beer out the back garden. That that to a lot of people is a pure, it's pure bliss.
yeah. Creating that lifestyle and that image of that lifestyle for somebody. Yeah,
So that's when you talk about things like, the comfort seating areas, as you
yeah,
said, and dressing with the waterproof cushions and the throws, and ultimately the coziness it'll project by day and night,
yeah.
just by simply looking at it. It's a classic example about clever marketing, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's when you look at the front of a when you look at the front of a weed killer product, you don't really see it killing weeds, do you? You actually see it with a luscious green lawn.
Hmm.
So it shows you what you could have, not what it's going to do.
Not what it's going to do. Yeah,
Because the negative effect is worse, and you wouldn't buy it for that, and it would turn you off that product. Whereas the positive effect is the luscious green lawn, or even a family having a picnic on that lawn.
yeah. And you think that's what I want, and it makes you pick it
It
up.
makes you
Yeah,
want to buy it for that
yeah,
reason. So what about things like chimes? They do my head in
yeah. I
sometimes.
mean, I know, but this is all about the senses, and it's really you know you could have your nice borders and plants and areas and seating and everything. But it's appealing to people's sensory side of things, and introducing maybe sensual and restorative elements like sound, and you say like wind chimes and things. Also water. Water's a big thing. Water features that could really be quite. That could have a really positive effect on people with the flickering of the water, or if you've got like you've got these oil burners on the tabletops or these and flickering the flames if it's like certain times of day.
Chimney.
Yeah, a chimney and things as well. With all these accessories and contemporary fountains or fire pits and things. These all have a positive effect and pick people's senses, pick them up when they're either watching the walkthrough video or they're actually there in person.
Sound of water is definitely a thing. There's been a couple of times I've had with the wee stream line right next to the garden. It's never going to be overpowering, it's never going to overflow or anything like that. But just the fact that trickled that stream alongside, and I've often felt compelled to just shut my mouth and just no say anything at that point in time. And I've got to say that's quite difficult for me. Because once I start, I don't stop, do I? It's like, honestly, when I get out the back, sometimes I go, and I'm just going to go quiet, and I'm thinking to myself, Jim, shut up, for God's sake. Just let the birds do the talking, or let the sea in the background do the talking for you. You don't need to say anything. Shut up, Jim, I'm saying to myself in my mind, and just let that do the work for you as you pan round.
Yeah, and sometimes it is when you do the video to stop yourself from talking through it too much. But yeah, to have that wee moment, just letting the sounds to do the work.
And kicking back to the humming, when you get the bees and the tweeting and the fluttering of the visitors, visitors against the rustling of the leaves and the breeze when it comes into the autumn period as well, and even when it's a bit windy on a summery day, because you still hear that from the trees, with the sun's warmth on your skin and the scent of the lovely summer is bliss. Reminds me of Glastonbury. Just sitting on the hill. Oh dear. Oh, I'm looking forward to that in June.
It'll not be long for you there anyway.
I'm looking forward to that in June. Glastonbury, here we come.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, it's just complete bliss, I would say. Having the ideal back garden and really tranquil space. It is another place just to escape to, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And then I think we're going to round up today, as you say, Jim, we're talking about keeping up appearances as the last topic for today. So having made your outdoor space that thing of beauty and investing all your time, and it's always important to keep that little bit of attention on a weekly basis, and that'll help keep your plants, from day to day looking good, and it'll really charm your buyers on every viewing when they come through if your garden's maintained at that level. Because it's all very well putting all that time and having it look nice, but it could all overgrow and look terrible again within a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's there's a phrase in here you'd actually said in the script is like help your plants delight you every day. But it's not just a case of delighting you. It's a case as well of you delighting your plants, because they're living, breathing things.
Yeah.
And it's well known, Prince Charles or King Charles has done this in the years before about, talking to your plants and being with nature, and they'll grow faster as a result of that. And I think it's been scientifically proven.
Like playing music and things and speaking to them, yeah, seemingly.
And just being around them, they pick up on your vibe. So if you're quite a negative person, I don't think your plants grow that well. Whereas if you're quite a positive, outgoing person and you give off that aura about you, I think your plants pick up on it.
Yeah, you probably notice people that take a lot of enjoyment and things and doing their garden. They sometimes really have really nice gardens, and it's because they put the time in and they've got that effort, and probably because they've got that positive attitude towards it.
So this is all about then keeping up appearances.
Yeah.
One up on the next door neighbour. Yeah, my God, look at your garden.
But yeah, you could keep up appearances and you could still keep it quite simple. And like I say, obviously, I've said it previously in the show, keep your soil covered with things like maybe mulch or bark or slate or gravel. Those minimise weeds coming through, help your beds retain the water. Bark is particularly easy to change as it naturally rots down. And do you know what I mean? You're not implementing maybe the slate and the stones if you want to keep that natural look as well.
Less hassle for weeds, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. That makes it look nice and tidy, but it's still kind of natural. Like
it does, because if you have that plain look in your garden, like the earth, just the bare earth, when the weeds come through, you see it straight away. When you have the bark, it's just all a different mix of colours. You know, they're different types of brown, but some dark, all the different shades of brown you can get throughout the bark. And then especially when it goes wet as well, it makes it even look a different colour. It's kind of like the Isle of May. Like if you look at the Isle of May, it's a different colour. And the Bass Rock as well. Every time you look at that and you take a picture of it, it's just a different colour. It's like a different place. And yeah, it's like, wait a minute, I saw that yesterday and it was not white yesterday.
Yeah.
Why is it white today?
Yeah, so yeah, the bark's a really good thing. Like I say, for low maintenance and making it look really good. Also, when it comes to plants and people, like you say, Jim, if you've got a big garden, you could get somebody in to help. But if you've got a garden and you're not that a great gardener, it's still easy enough to, deadhead your plants regularly by removing the flowers that are spent. And that only takes just going out there with scissors and maybe snip that off, and then that encourages new buds, and then it stops the old ones from dropping off and seeding elsewhere, and having things growing where you don't want them to grow. It's quite easy to manage a relatively medium, small size garden. If you've got a larger one, then you might not have the time.
I've got to admit, and they're probably never going to know anything about this at all, out of my place in Algarve on the golf course, I do cut back some of the bushes and trees in front of the golf course because everybody else has got them right in front of them and blocked out their view. But I systematically go over there and just prune them down and cut them off. I don't cut them down or anything, I just cut them back. Make sure they're manageable and they look nice for the golf course itself, and they have but we have our outlook as well, and it's not actually just covered up completely.
Yeah, definitely. So you do gardening
in some shape or form. I do. When there's an opportunity, it's like, wait a minute, that's going to block out the sun. It's like, let's get over there. I did that at Vetriana Vale, actually. They planted a tree when they built Vetriana Vale and leaving across from Diageo. I bought a new build one there when they first got built all these years ago, just before the credit crunch, mid 2000s. I bought one there off plan. And then subsequently, they put a tree right next to the corner of my property. And I went, there's no way that's going there. You're getting that out and taking it and putting it on. But it's on the plan. I says, I couldn't care less if it's on the plan. It's going to grow and it's going to go straight into my house at the foundations at some point in time. And then it's going to overwhelm the side of the property. And then at some point in time, because I know the sun comes round that way, it's going to block out the sun to the back garden.
Yeah.
It says, so you're not putting it there or I'm cutting it down. I mean, literally, it was just a twig. But at that point, I saw it as eventually in 5 or 10 years' time, this is going to be a massive tree. And then it's going to be a problem. And you're not going to be able to do anything about it at all at that point in time because it's noticeable. So I got them to move it. So the next person obviously got the benefit of my wisdom.
Yeah, no, it's trees too close to your house. It can be really problematic. So watch when you're planting things. Also, I think about in the dry weather as well, if you're planting plants and if you go, I mean, sometimes if you're buying quite a lot of plants to do your garden, it can be a bit pricey. Water the plants, water them at the root, do it in the evening when there's less chance of the water getting evaporated by the sun. As I said, pots need water regularly as well. And really, if you don't do it, they will die, and you'll be gutted if your plants all die after spending money and time and things putting them all in place.
For ones that you can get cuttings out as well, you can actually just grow them a wee bit in the pot and get another cutting and actually just start growing that as well. Roses, you can cut, you can cut bits off of roses and actually replant them as well, and they'll grow.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could get cuttings from, and things grow quite quickly if you and all it takes is that wee cutting to look after it, and then you could repot it and replant it. And you could make your own, and that does save a lot of money because plants are expensive. In some of the garden centres now, you'll be shocked at the prices of some plants. So if you've got a green thumb or you've got the time, do your own cuttings and make your own plants. When you're thinking about watering plants and making sure they're not dried out, you can usually tell by looking at the leaf and how the leaves are wilted and on the underside and things and how dry they actually are. Watering your plants is so important, particularly when they're in a pot. Or if you've put like a membrane down and then stones or whatever around it, even though it's been raining, they won't get a lot of rain. So definitely water them and do that in the evening as well.
Yeah, as opposed to a yellow thumb, which means you're smoking too much.
Yeah, or a brown one. Like, yeah, no, we're talking about green thumbs here.
So make sure it's just a green thumb you've got, and no a brown or a yellow. Well, a brown one's quite worrying as well, actually.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
All right, okay. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of good information in there. I mean, having a garden or balcony looks fabulous for photographs and views can make really all the fundamental difference and interest in your property, and actually said boost your price, and you could finally achieve. There's a lot of properties on the market right now. I can tell you that for a fact. Especially St Andrews area is a classic example. I mean, KY16. I did the numbers this morning, and there was something like 156 properties available in KY16 area, which is the St Andrews and surrounding periphery. Now that's a lot, considering only one person, less than one person, buys a property every single day in St Andrews. For having 156 on, that is literally like 6 months stock.
Yeah.
That's how long it takes to sell in St Andrews, if that's the case. That's about 6 months stock in St Andrews. So it's a balanced market in St Andrews now, whereas as you go from the east coast across to the west coast, it actually gets better. So by the time you get to Dunfermline, for example, you're talking about quick sales. 70% of the stock sold. Dunfermline's a huge market. There's 211 properties actually available, but there's about 10 people making a decision every single day to buy and sell in the Dunfermline area. So, I mean, that'll literally go through in 20 days. So you're less than a month to sell in Dunfermline, whereas you go to the East Coast, you're a lot longer. So these are all things that everybody has to really think about where they are. And the one thing I would say a lot of people is definitely your garden is really important in this thing, because what's going to separate you? What's going to separate you from everybody else? And this is a classic example. A lot of people, and I've said to somebody this morning, actually, a lot of people rely on Rightmove so much. But if you've got, for example, 1,000 properties to choose from, and somebody's just looking for Fife, and they've got 1,000 properties to choose from, what's going to get your property to stand out?
How are you going to stand out? That's what I was just going to say.
And you might be a different price bracket, but then when you hone down at that price bracket, maybe you've got a few hundred. But you've got one person with a choice of a few hundred. And then when you come down to places like, for example, let's take East Neuk. So East Neuk's got 90 properties available at this point in time. So when you look at, it's a lot. So when you look at that as well, and you've only got less than one buyer every day in the East Neuk area looking to buy and sell, then you've got a lot of stock there as well, probably about 2 or 3 months.
That's about 3 months. 3 months stock then, yeah.
Yeah, 3 months stock in the East Neuk. So when you look at and you drill it down, then you've got to use every tool in the kit every sales tool in the kit in order to get your house sold. It's not going to be one big thing that's going to make the difference. But this is why I think, and again, I reiterate, I spoke to someone this morning about it and said, this is why it's so important to have an agent with a proper digital marketing strategy that actually drives traffic to their website listings. Because if they're not a volume agent, or maybe drives traffic to you individually, because the most important thing is people see your property and not a list with everyone else's properties in them. You just want them to buy yours. You're not interested in letting them see anybody else's. But this is why a lot of people actually forget and they go, oh, you've got to be on Rightmove. All right, okay. So I'm going to sell you a tin of beans. Well, just call it like that, because you've got Cross and Brackwell, you've got Heinz, you've got, Newlands, you've got all different types from different people. But if you've got them all sitting on the same shelf, what's going to distinguish yours from somebody else? This is why you want to make sure you've got your own shop. because then you're the only one in the shop that anybody can buy. Therefore, guess what they're left to buy? Yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important to have a proper digital marketing strategy and understand the dynamics of the market overall. But give yourself a head start. Make sure you've got a good quality garden, because that's your front garden as well. That's the doorstep to your property, and that's where the curb appeal lies. And curb appeal is everything. That's your first impression. Yes, you do get a second chance to make a good first impression, by the way. And we've talked about that in a previous show. We might talk about it again later on. But, thanks for coming on, Richard. Really appreciate that. What's your final thoughts on the one thing that someone can do then about their garden? It will make a fundamental difference.
Yeah, I think as obviously we've delved quite deep into like the garden tips and everything, and people might wonder, why are you giving us all this tips about gardening? It is so important, especially where we are, whether you've got a sea view, whether you've got a countryside view. Really think about what people are going to walk out into your garden and feel, and how they're going to sensory recept to it. And if you can make those, even just the small changes, whether it be some plants or tidying the place up, it really will add thousands. And if you're not too sure what that is, or you have no idea, speak to somebody that does, and either get it done yourself or get somebody to do it for you.
Perfect. That's a good ending to this. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Richard. And everybody else for watching in and tuning in. And if you've got any comments, please feel free to mention them, or you can message us direct on this post as well. And until next week's Saturday morning show, which will be a letting show with you, Richard, and myself as well. It's goodbye from us. Bye-bye for now.